Welcome back to Nest Talk, the Emory Eagles podcast. My name is Taylor C. I am the Assistant Director for Athletic Communications here at Emory, and I'm very excited about our guest today. You do so much around Emory, and I'm so excited to get into everything that you do. So our guest today on episode 4 is Chad Hixon.
Hi, Taylor. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's just start with your role at Emory. Kind of tell us what you do, how you're involved, because you do so much around here, and I think you're probably one of the biggest supporters that Emory Athletics has.
I appreciate you saying that. My main role is I'm an Associate Athletic Director for Student Athlete Success and Compliance. In that role, I'm really kind of charged with helping student athletes succeed on and off, or I should say off the court, off the field. So we do different programs around career prep, financial literacy. We really try to connect them to the different resources that are available to them here at Emory. We know as student athletes, they have really tight schedules. So we really try to bring those resources to them to make things a little bit easier for them so they can get the full Emory experience. I was a student athlete here, and I just know that 3 to 7 window, Monday through Friday, there's a lot going on campus, and you're typically in the woodpeck either at practice, film session, some sort of workout, so you really miss out on a lot of those things. So my role, my job is to bring those things to our student athletes and make it a little bit more accessible for them. And then on the compliance side, just making sure that our teams are in compliance with the UAA and NCAA guidelines. So that's my main role. And then I'm also an assistant coach on the Emory men's basketball team. This will be my second year this time around. I was on the staff for 3 years back in 2013 through 2016. So just a quick recap of what some of the things that I do here.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into all of it, but I want to know a little bit more about you. So you grew up just 20 miles from here. What was that like kind of growing up around the area? Was there, obviously you were in basketball at a young age. Was there anything else going on in your life?
So I've been in Georgia my entire life. I'm 37. Doesn't look like I'm ever going to leave at this point. It's home. I don't really know anything else. And as you said, I grew up in Snellville, Georgia, not too far from here. I was actually born in North Georgia in a small town called Dalton. It's also known as the carpet capital of the world. So I lived there until middle school, and then we moved to Snellville. Spent a lot of time playing basketball, as you said. I'd say I was a fairly good student. Probably didn't devote myself as much as I should have, and that's also part of the reason why I do some of the things I do now is to help folks not make those same mistakes that I did when I was coming up.
When you were younger in, playing basketball in high school, was it kind of always the goal to eventually go to college for that?
Yeah, since I was in elementary school, I knew I wanted to play college basketball. Didn't know what that looked like, but I had some older folks in my community who walked that path, so I kind of got to see, what they did to get there. And so that kind of showed me what I needed to do. Growing up, I didn't know what Emory was, certainly. But, once we moved to the metro Atlanta area, I became more familiar with it. And then as I got, towards my later years of high school, Emory was something that I was aware of.
So what was that recruiting process like? Because for those who don't know, you spent time at Oxford, down the road a little ways, and then you came here. So what was that recruiting process like for you?
So it was an adventure. So I actually went to the University of West Georgia for my freshman year of college. Coming out of high school, I'd say I was an above average high school player. I was in Gwinnett County, which in my opinion is the best basketball county in the state, maybe the Southeast. So there were a lot of really good players at that time, especially. I graduated high school in 2005. Didn't really have much going on from a recruiting standpoint. Part of that's because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't work as hard as I should have in the classroom. I think I had a 3.2 in high school. Easily could have been a 3.6, 3.7 had I worked a little bit harder. So because of that, didn't have a ton of opportunities. Graduated high school in May 2005. Had no idea what I was going to do. And so my mom's actually a graduate of West Georgia, and she said, you need to apply. You need to go somewhere because you ain't staying here. So they have a late admissions deadline. So I applied and decided to go. I need to be in school. Need to be doing something positive. So went there. Thought about trying to walk on, but ultimately decided not to. I knew I wanted to play college basketball, but I also knew I wanted to get a great kind of academic fit and some academic rigor. So I started looking around. I don't know how, but somehow I came across Oxford. So I did some research, reached out to the coaching staff, started building a relationship with them. They said you need to do X, Y, Z in order to transfer over. So I worked really hard to keep my grades up, and luckily I was able to get admitted, and then transition there in fall of 2006. Spent 2 years there, had a great time, loved it. Kind of wish I could have been there 4 years, but
I have to ask, and not to show your age here, but all of our guests, are in their senior years of college now. And when they were talking about recruiting, like there's text messages and there's FaceTime and there's all of this. So how did that process maybe look a little different for you going, in 2005 to a different school and trying to do that recruiting process?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to age myself. When I was in high school, we used these things called VHSs, which excuse me, most people maybe don't remember what those are, but compared to now, oh my goodness, like it was just night and day. Trying to get film to send out, having to like physically put it in the mail to send those VHSs out, as well as DVDs too. It's just night and day. I mean, it made the process so much longer. It's got to go through the mail. Coach has got to get it. He's got to watch it. Versus now where, especially in basketball, like you have highlight tapes, half an hour after your game that you can just send out, via email to the whole world. So that made it challenging. So there wasn't really a big social media presence back then, other than like MySpace, which they probably don't know what that is either. So there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, no Instagram, no TikTok, none of that. So more challenging, I would say. But if you want it, you go get it, right? So, I made, all those moves, had my film sent out, went to different camps and things like that to try to make it happen. And didn't happen for me right out of high school, but, eventually I was able to get to a good spot.
So now let's move into your time at Oxford. We're going to stick with you for a little bit longer. So you were an All-American there. You broke 16 career and single season records. So how did that time there kind of prepare you to come to the main campus, and what was that, what was that process like? Was it the goal to always get here?
Yeah, I went there not really knowing what to expect. I remember the first time I played with my teammates. I felt like I was one of the better players in the group. But again, I didn't know if I was going to start, would I play, like it just. And then once the season got going, our first game, I just found some success, and I don't know, something clicked or whatever. But I was able to have a pretty good freshman year in particular. I just kept working at it. I think the goal was to try to get a scholarship just to kind of make things a little bit more affordable. But, Emory, certainly isn't a bad backup option. It's a great school. But just to kind of make things a little bit easier on my family, the goal was to get an athletic scholarship. That didn't work out, but had a great time at Emory. I don't want to skip ahead, but yeah, I had a great time once I got to the Atlanta campus. As far as Oxford, again, spent 2 years there, loved it. My coach, Coach Stubbs, he's still there. My roommate and one of my best friends was one of my teammates there. We stay in contact. A couple other guys I stay in contact with. It was just good to play again because I hadn't played for a year. So great experience. Again, learned a lot. Like I said, I love my time there. I'm pro Oxford always. It's an amazing place.
Now, am I correct that when you came to Emory, you were playing under Coach Zimmerman?
Yeah, so Coach Z got hired, I think, in April 2007, which was going into my sophomore year at Oxford. So I actually met him his first week here. He came over and watched us work out. So I've known him for a long time.
Now we're aging Coach Zimmerman too.
Well, I mean, I used to have hair back then. Well, actually, we both had hair back then. But yeah, I mean, it's what 17 years now. I've known him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great coach. So was he kind of like, I guess, how influential was he on your time here?
Extremely. He's the reason I came here. He's very passionate about getting Emory to the best possible position, and he's done that in the last 17 years. He again he recruited me as soon as he got here. Stayed in touch with me. Really showed me that he wanted me to be here. Big part of why I decided to come here. Again, Emory's a great place educationally. The UAA experience is amazing. I didn't really get that back then, but just looking back, it's incredible. Like, before I got to Emory, I'd never been on a plane. So my first time flying was actually my freshman year at Oxford. But, had that not happened, then my first time would have been when I got to Emory, like flying to a UAA game. So, like, basketball can, like, create so many, like, really cool experiences that you don't really think about. So, and Coach Z, once I graduated, I kind of stepped away from basketball for a little bit, but I started getting that itch. You do something for 20 years, it's hard to stop. And so he's a big part of that. Again, his passion, and it really kind of helped me realize how much I love basketball, and I wanted to be around it. And luckily I have been for the last, after taking that break, the last 10 years or so, I've been able to pretty much be in some sort of full-time capacity.
All right, let's go back to education. So you get your bachelor's degree at Emory, then you go and get your master's at Mercer University. So obviously education kind of, started trickling into your life a little bit more, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I graduated from Emory in 2010. The plan was to go to law school. I was a political science major, really into politics, those sorts of things. So wanted to go to law school, got out, and went and worked in a couple of law firms and realized I do not want to go to law school. So it took me a couple of years to figure that out. It's probably a lot to do with the type of firms I was working at. I was doing bankruptcy law, which is, not exciting at all. So, decided not to do that and started thinking about, what do I want to do? And kind of thought back to my time at Emory. I had some folks who really helped me get across that finish line when I was struggling, and I wanted to pay it forward, to be quite honest. So, higher ed was something that piqued my interest, and I wanted to look into. So I knew if I wanted to get a good position, I guess, I needed to go back to school. So I started looking at some different options. The Mercer program made sense because it was a working adult program. I could still work and go to school in the evening. So I was lucky to find that. Did that for a year and a half, got out, and was able to start my higher ed career. And eight and a half years later, here we are.
What did that experience teach you, like working jobs and being in school and kind of juggling all of that? What's your biggest takeaway from that?
Yeah, I'd say, time management is always important, but you get that being a student athlete, especially at a place like Emory, when you've got, tests, projects, papers, along with your athletic obligations. So, those skill sets really translate to once you get into adulthood. So it wasn't too difficult for me, again, because I've been doing it for so long. So, again, time management, task prioritization, all those sorts of things that you do as a student athlete, you don't feel like have value. They do have value, especially once you get into the quote unquote real world.
So out of school, out of your master's degree, then you start getting into academic advising, and you were at Mercer. You've been to Georgia State. Now you're here. What kind of just take us through all of those years of doing that and what you kind of learned from it?
Yeah. So first job out of grad school was as an admissions counselor for that's kind of that same program, working adult program out in Douglas County. I did that for like 6 months, I think. What I learned is that I do not want to work in admissions. So I think when I talk to students, I always say this. I think there's a lot of value in, of course, knowing what you want to do, but I think there's equally as much value in knowing what you don't want to do. And sometimes you don't know that until you actually do something. So, I learned that admissions was not for me. And then I knew one of the reasons I went into my program is because I wanted to do academic advising. I knew that. It was just a matter of finding some positions that made sense for me. And so started looking around. One of my high school teammates and friends was an advisor at Georgia State. And so I reached out to him to kind of pick his brain. And then once a position opened, I applied. I let him know that I had applied, and he essentially helped me get the job. So relationships matter, right? So even someone who, I'd known in high school, we've been friends for a while, but that relationship is what ultimately got me the job. So I worked there from September 2016 until December 2020, so a little bit over 4 years. Learned a lot. Realized that I did enjoy academic advising. It was great for me. I love working with students. There's a big emphasis on graduation rates at Georgia State, so it kind of gives you a why behind what you're doing. Like, you're trying to help this person, get to that finish line, because we know that folks with a college degree, their lifetime earnings are significantly higher than those without it. So that helped me. It's one of those jobs where I think there's some burnout with it, but if you kind of stay true to that why, I think it keeps you going. So and did that for 4 years. Through the years I had looked at Emory and tried to apply for different positions and things like that. Never got hired. But I'd been at Georgia State for 4 years, and I saw an academic advising position at Emory open up, and I said, I'm qualified for this. I can do this, and applied for it. Got a call back. Did my phone interview. I think I did a Zoom interview because this was during COVID, and was lucky enough to get hired, and worked here as an academic advisor for about 3.5 years. Loved it. Emory's different than Georgia State, but Emory's also home for me. So it was great coming back home and being here.
What was it like? Because at one point when you were hired as the assistant coach, you were also continuing to do academic advising. So how was that? How did those two worlds kind of collab, and then what kind of ultimately, led you to your role now?
Yeah. So Coach Z and I spoke. Guess it would have been summer 2023. I think I bumped into him at an AAU event or something like that. I was kind of looking to make a transition, and I had a couple college coaches, talk to me about being assistants, and so I went to him to get his thoughts on it. And he's like, I've been meaning to talk to you too. So we had a conversation. Ultimately, I decided that those other opportunities weren't the best fits for me. And so an opportunity opened up to come on staff here for a second time, and I jumped at the opportunity. I get it. This is home. I don't have to move. I'm working across campus. It just made sense. It's a good fit. I think that being an academic advisor, it's a little bit different here because the students, they kind of know what they need to do for the most part. There's the occasional question that comes up for sure, but for me, it helped me to kind of provide a service really for our men's basketball players, help them kind of navigate their path that they had questions about, policies and things like that. I could, help them with that. Other athletes as well. Just because I went to school here, I have relationships with some of the coaches here previously. I've known them for quite a while. So just kind of helped me merge my two interests of education and basketball, which I've been trying to figure out how to do for a long time and hadn't quite been able to up to that point.
What was your the biggest reward, I guess, from seeing the success? Because our student athletes are some of the greatest in the country, I believe that wholeheartedly. But they're also out there doing amazing things academically and getting these amazing degrees. So what's kind of been the reward for you that you've seen on and off, the courts, the fields, and then in the classroom?
Yeah, for me, my goal would be for every athlete to graduate from Emory and either have a full-time job in place or some sort of grad professional school opportunity, or if they're trying to take like a gap year, I want them to know what they want to do and have that lined up when they graduate. For speaking specifically of men's basketball, that's been the case for all of our guys. And again, it's just really about exposing them to all the different things that are available to them. We have the Emory network, of course, but there's also, the men's basketball network that I want them to tap into. And then again, Emory has so many different resources that I think sometimes they don't know about. So it's really just bringing that to their attention and making sure they take advantage of it. So I'd say the most rewarding thing, obviously, is graduation. That's the ultimate goal. But also making sure they get the most out of their Emory experience, getting a return on that investment. And that looks different for everybody, depending on what their interests and aspirations are. But ultimately, that's the goal I have.
I think it's good too to have somebody that's been in their position. You've been a student athlete and seen what it takes to get there. Because for those who don't know, like the schedule of a student athlete is grueling, and so I'm sure it's helpful for them too, for you to have been in that position.
I hope so, because I can certainly speak to that experience for sure. In a couple of different ways, honestly. I spoke earlier about like that 3 to 7 window. No, there's definitely things that I feel like I missed out on when I was a student athlete here because of my athletic obligations. We also have a lot more resources here in the athletics department than we did before. There was no Eagle Edge program when I was in school here. There was no kind of mental health professional when I was in school here. All those different things that we've put in place now to help support them, I think is really great, and I just want to make sure they take advantage of it. I think sometimes we can take things for granted, especially if it's been here the whole time, you don't know any different. But just my perspective, like we didn't have any of this. It was just kind of figure it out yourself, which we did obviously, but we just want to make it a little bit more easier for them.
For a potential student athlete that might be watching this or listening to this, can you explain a little bit more about what Eagle Edge is and what you guys have done? Because the impact is amazing.
I appreciate you saying that. So Tristan has been doing the work for a couple of years now. He and Audrey. I've really just come in to try to build on what they've been doing. But Eagle Edge is our student athlete development program. So again, we really just want to support them off the field, off the court. So, providing different resources. So, for instance, we had a resume building workshop earlier this semester prior to the career fair. We had a mental health Q&A seminar with Natasha Hastings earlier this semester. We've invited some different companies to come in and do tabling where they're offering internships, job opportunities. We've got a financial literacy workshop next week. So all those kind of things we're trying to do to connect them to the different resources and opportunities at Emory and outside of Emory.
Awesome. Getting back to basketball, I don't know if you had seen, but the UAA preseason poll just came out today.
I saw it right before I came down.
They're second. What are you guys looking forward to this season? It's right around the corner.
Yeah, we start practice tonight. So I'm looking forward to a great season. We've got a lot of guys back from last year, so expectations are high for sure, but we have a lot of work to do. And so very talented team. We got a great group of guys. We just want to make sure the seniors get sent out the right way. So a lot of hard work to do between now and November, but I think we're up for the challenge.
All right. I want to get into your impact at Emory. I have talked to a few people, and I just want to read to you some of the words that they use to describe you. Loyal, thoughtful, advocate, reliable are just a few of the many. I'm sure, coming in and doing what you've done, that's got to feel good to hear that that's the impact you have on people.
Yeah, I think we all want to be well thought of, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. It's the reason I wanted to work in higher ed. Again, when I was here, especially my senior year, I had some struggles, and I had people here who helped me get across the finish line. So really been trying to pay that forward. I don't know that I ever will be able to, but that's the goal.
Specifically when meeting with student athletes and finding out what they need to do to succeed, what's your biggest goal when meeting with them? And especially maybe those who, might not come from, you know, a good background or anything like that, you know, that might be from an underrepresented community. What's your goal in that, and how do you help them get through their college experience?
Yeah, every case is different. Obviously, each time you meet with a student athlete, everyone has their own individual needs. So kind of do an assessment of that. What's the situation? You know, did something happen? What sort of assistance do you need? And then, identifying the resources we have to assist them with that. Speaking on underrepresented groups, there's so many different resources here at Emory. And if you are like first gen or maybe come from a less affluent background, you just maybe aren't aware of that. So really just kind of connecting those dots for them and showing them the different resources we have here. And again, we want to bring them to our student athletes. So bringing them to the Woodpeck or identifying some program where the student athlete can get there that's accessible for them, I think is the big thing. But we do a lot of referrals in terms of, identifying resources for them to tap into. But we also don't want to, we don't want to do like a cold referral, I think is the term to use. It needs to be a warm referral. So whether that's, maybe walking them to the place or connecting them with that individual beforehand, I think there's some benefit to that. Again, I think everyone's needs are different. We just want to make sure that our student athletes get what they need. And hopefully they come back, when another situation arises.
I think Emory has done a really good job, both the university and the athletic department, of providing those resources, like you said, and especially, the identity spaces now at Cox Hall. Like Emory's doing a great job. But what do you think, maybe outside of Emory, that colleges and universities or athletic departments could do to maybe provide more of those resources?
Yeah. College is getting more and more expensive, right? So those costs are going up every year. There's a lot of talk that, a college degree isn't as valuable as it used to be. I don't agree with that. I think there's a lot of value in it. I think the data shows that in terms of lifetime earnings and so forth. But I think you have to be really smart and strategic and intentional with everything you do. So even coming down to the college you pick, find the best fit for you and your family, academically, socially, financially, and if you're a student athlete, athletically as well. I think if you do that, you put yourself in a position to be successful. But then once you get to college, like there's work that still has to be done, right? Not just in your classroom, but just taking advantage of the experience. One of the things I regret, well, a couple things actually, I don't think I did a good enough job of fostering and nurturing relationships when I was in college, even teammates. I look at some of the folks that have come after I graduated, and those guys just seem so much closer than I was with some of my teammates. And yeah, I think some of that is because I was only here for 2 years. I came from Oxford, but I also think there's some intentional purpose that those guys put into making those relationships work. I wish I had done that when I was in school. I wish I had studied abroad, done study abroad. That's like my one big regret. So I always encourage student athletes to do that. Obviously, you can't do it in season, but there's summer opportunities you can take advantage of. Just to get that ROI, the return on investment, like you have to put yourself out there and take advantage of all the things that we have to offer here. Now, would that mean that sometimes you're tired and maybe a little irritated and annoyed? Yeah, but I think in the long run, it pays off.
All right, I have one more question for you. We're almost done. What would be your advice to someone who might think that college is not a good investment, or they might feel, I don't come from a family with a lot of money and I don't know how I'm going to pay for school. Like, what's your advice to them? Because there's ways for everybody to come to college.
Absolutely. There's so many different pathways you could take. Junior college, community college. If there's one close to home, that's a really affordable option. You can, take classes there, live at home potentially and save some money. earn your associate's degree and then transfer to a 4-year institution and finish up. If you are from a first-gen low-income family, there's different programs like QuestBridge Scholarship Program, which we have some of those folks here at Emory. There's a Jackie Robinson Foundation that does scholarships. Just requires some research, and I know that some folks maybe don't have those resources at their high school. I know some schools have like college counselors and things like that. But yeah, there's opportunities out there for sure. If you're lucky enough to get an athletic scholarship, that's great as well. But that's not the only way to pay for school. I would say just kind of do the research and find ways to make it more affordable. It's not the end of the world to have some student loan debt for sure, especially if it's going to lead to a high paying job out of school. But certainly don't put yourself in a hole that's going to be really hard to dig out of. Because you feel like you have to. There's other ways to get to that end goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. I encourage all students, Emory, all around the country, just listen to this. This was so insightful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.